He is the author of the Scott Jarvis investigation series, the USS Bullshark naval thriller series, the Catherine Cook Sea Adventure series, as well as some horror books that we might mention here in a bit. And we also have Dave Alexander, who narrates the Scott Jarvis investigation series and the USS Bullshark naval thriller series. And I'm guessing you have to look up a lot of Japanese words.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott.
That's one of the things that we always get into is what we as authors do to try to make our narrators stumble when actually we should be helping them.
I do it all the time.
But it's fun.
Yeah, oh yeah. Learn a lot of Japanese.
So you have a military background, don't you, Scott?
What's that?
Yeah, you're a prior military, aren't you?
No, actually, no. People think that. No. They wouldn't let me in.
All this time, I thought you were, I mean, just because of the books you write. Oh, wow. I'm surprised.
I do.
Were you a history buff all of your life?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, maybe not when I was a toddler, but pretty soon after that, I became a history buff. I've liked World War II, Roman history, Napoleonic era, a few other genres too.
Well, if you would, why don't you describe the Scott Jarvis series and how different it is from the Bullshark series and how different it is from the Catherine Cook series? You write very different things.
Well, yeah. The Jarvis series started, I wrote the first one like 25 years ago. And then it sort of sat on the shelf and kind of collected dust until about 2017, when a friend of mine suggested to me that I should start publishing on Kindle and on Amazon. And I didn't know anything about it. So I went and did some research and started off, I brushed the book off and edited several times. And, and it's funny because everyone I put out, the people that I know, beta readers and friends and stuff, it's like, oh, this is the best one you've ever done, which is nice, but it's also like, what does that mean? Number 12 is better than number 1, right? So, yeah, that's a Florida-based detective series. And the main character, the reason he shares my first name is because when I wrote him, I couldn't think of a first name at first. So I said, well, I'll just plug this in and change it later. And it just sort of stuck, I
had the same trouble early on. And I went on Facebook and I asked my friends, hey, would any of y'all like to be in my book? And a whole bunch of people volunteered. So I just made 2 columns for male and female. And whenever I came to a new character, I gave them that name. And a lot of them didn't like it, but I eventually killed most of them off anyway.
Yeah. I remember you saying that in a previous podcast. And I think in No Collar to Blue Collar, you mentioned that as well. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there's a much easier way that I found probably after about 4 books. There's actually a website called fakenames.com.
I think I've seen that.
You put in the parameters that you want, the age range, male, female, ethnic background, things like that. It spits out not just a name, but what kind of car they drive, where they live.
Wow.
All this fake information, and you can just create your bio and be done.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Because the thing that I find is you want character names to sound real. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to get into these stodgy sort of fake sounding names. And it's hard to quantify that, but you can only use so many Smith and Joneses before you run out,
Yeah. And as an audiobook narrator, I should also point out that you want to avoid 5 people that all start with the letter S in the same scene together.
That was a dig, Scott.
Oh, I see. Did I do that?
It just happened to come about that in one scene in one of my books, several of my main characters' old flames came together. And they were Sarah,
Savannah.
Who was it, Jordy? Sarah.
Savannah, yeah.
Savannah, yeah.
Sarah, Savannah, Sandy, and there was 4 of them. I can't remember the last one. But yeah, that's the way it happened.
Well, that's how it goes sometimes. What can you do? It's that's the power of the writer. We can do what we want. We are masters of our own fake universe.
Now, out of curiosity, Scott Jarvis, because when there are Florida mysteries, a lot of times the lead character, if he's a detective or an ex-cop or a current cop, that they're not from Florida. Is the Scott Jarvis in your books from Florida or from somewhere else?
No, he's from Rhode Island too. He moved down after graduating high school. He's an ex-cop, and he graduated and moved down to Orlando and went to college there and became a detective there, and so it kind of starts off there. So the books sometimes will go back and forth, and they cover like the latest. Well, they go all over the state in different areas. It's like your guys' do. So it keeps it interesting, keeps from getting too stale from being in the same town the whole time. Like you asked before, what is it like? He's kind of across a bit of Spencer, a bit of Philip Marlowe, some Doc Ford thrown in. That's
we
a pretty
all draw from those same characters. It's all our characters are, a conglomerate of everything that we've read.
Oh yeah, you can't help that, and it influences you, as you say a lot, Wayne. You're strongly influenced by Travis McGee, Doc Ford, and I have been too, so it's natural.
Well, before we switch over to Dave,
what's the hardest thing that Scott's thrown at you?
Me? Did you say to? Oh, jeez.
Yeah, what's the hardest thing he's thrown at you?
Oh my heavens! Besides bricks, no. There was a scene in Scott Jarvis where it was. I'm just getting my feet wet when it comes to narrating. And he threw in something where there was it Israeli? It was Hispanic. It was Scott. There was a Scottish guy, and I was just like, "Oh my heavens!" And it was several pages long, and I'm like, I'd stop and I'd kind of look over to my right, like, Scott, you're killing me.
I'm sure I've been cursed many times.
So yeah, that's probably the toughest thing that's been thrown at me from Scotty.
Well, you know what I do?
The next one Nick's going to get will have Jesse taking a wedding party over to St. Bart's, and there will be 20 characters.
Oh, I feel for you, Nick.
Is this the same book where you asked me how my Taino accent is?
Oh, God.
I try to keep them separated into small groups, 2 or 3 over here talking and then 2 or 3 over here talking. So it won't be real hard, but it's going to be a little bit of a challenge.
Oh, boy.
And they all have to come.
Sure.
Florence is getting married, so they all got to be there.
Well, what I sometimes do, see, in the Jarvis series, in that world, he's the one writing the books. So he's sort of his own Watson. So it lets me break the fourth wall on occasion, and I'll even have him talk to Dave. And literally in a dialogue, we'll say to someone, or they'll say, "You're gonna make Dave Alexander read this when you do this audiobook?" And so I'll actually so it's I don't know, dude, that's just a little bit of fun that you sort of
that totally threw me off too. Because I'm just reading along like, wait a minute. Did you just throw me in there? Yeah, funny. It is hysterical.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
There's some adult content too, here and there. Yeah. And I always think about, Dave sitting in his studio reading that and praying that his wife and kids don't come in.
Yeah, and typically the female characters, the girlfriend's name is Lisa. My wife's name happens to be Lisa. So it's like, oh, this is interesting. I wonder if Lisa's listening in.
Well, what about the Bull Shark series? I imagine that's, especially from what you've just said about the Scott Jarvis, I imagine that's quite different.
Oh yeah, I think it is, especially. But I love the Bull Shark. Anvil Art Turner is got to be one of my favorite characters.
Wait, what's the name?
Anvil Art.
Anvil Art.
Yeah,
yep.
I love him.
That's his nickname.
Yeah,
he's the commander of the submarine. So that's one of the cool things about. Well, I'll tell you, there's several cool things about writing World War II. One of them is that everybody smokes, man. I mean, these cats smoked everywhere, right? Like anytime, any place, weddings, funerals, at church.
Rainstorms.
Jack. The submarine's on the bottom and they're running out of air and there's 80 cats lighting up Lucky Strikes. Like let's just suck away all of them. But it's great because it gives the writer, it gives you
Well, I was
something.
in the Marine Corps. We got 3 cigarettes with every sea ration box.
Yeah, but and I think probably Wayne and Nick, because you guys are both writers, cigarettes or cigars or things like that. It's a great emotional conveyance tool because you can do so much with that. So that's a lot of fun to use in a scene or as a character's expressing something, how he lights his smoke, how he smokes it, how he flicks his ash, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, how he forgets a pack every time.
Right.
He takes the dragon, thinks about what he's going to say.
Yeah. And yes, I do throw Dave a lot of, there's German accents and there's Japanese characters and Melanesians and,
yeah.
And of course, 5,000 characters because there's 20,000 Marines on shore and Dave's got to read them all.
Yeah. They are a lot of fun, man. Those Bull Shark novels are a blast. They're there's not a dull moment in them. That's for sure.
Uh-huh.
And real quick, because we don't have the narrator for this next series because he's British and didn't want to stay up late with us.
That's right.
I think he was just
Sleep.
embarrassed because we just celebrated, splitting
Our
off
independence.
this country. He's like, I'm
He's
not.
still mad at the colonists, isn't
That's
he?
it.
Right. You bloody seppos.
You have the Catherine Cook Sea Adventure series, which seems to be, Horatio Hornblower-esque, but with a gal.
Yes.
Is she a pirate? Like what? Tell us a little about.
So it's sort of a blending of C.S. Forrester and Patrick O'Brien and Dewey Lambton, and so her story is she's James Cook's illegitimate granddaughter, and she was his son James, who served in the Royal Navy as well. Had a fling with an American girl, and then the woman died, so James came back to get his daughter, and that trip back across the Atlantic just got her, she fell in love with the sea and she learned everything about, she learned about sailing and about ships. And she spent her whole life growing up that way with the desire to become a captain, of course, in an age where women didn't generally do that. Forrester and Patrick O'Brien. But through a series of bizarre events, she ends up taking, she's on a merchantman that gets captured by French privateers, and she ends up taking it back, and so she lands herself a command because of that.
And Scott, I tell you, I love how you first introduced her as a part of a story along with one of the Scott Jarvis books. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, that's how Bull Shark came about too.
Yeah,
and it was a historical background. So when I did that book, both Dave and Philip had to narrate and work together on that. And then I pulled the Catherine Cook chapters out and just published them as a separate book, and then wrote a sequel.
That's very cool. Stephen King is famous for sort of cross-pollinating across his books and putting little snippets in. And I'm sure some of those books started from a snippet of something that he thought that's really good, deserves its own book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he's even, in some of his stories, he's even referenced himself.
Yeah, he's a character in the Dark Tower.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, someone asked me the other day, I said, have you ever put yourself in one of your books? I said, no. But it would be kind of interesting to do that in a Jarvis book, just to have, there's someplace and there's a guy who's kind of giving them the eyeball for some reason. They don't know, and it's me, but it never says it's me, but it'll be me,
That may be happening in my next book.
Scott Cook is, it's not a really rare name. Scott is pretty common. Cook is very common.
That's why the W.
I can't do that.
Well, yeah, but guess what the W stands for? So, in my opinion, some of the best writers have a Wayne in their name someplace. So, that's what the W stands for. So we got.
But I have been in several novels. I've been in one of Don McKenna's. 2 or 3 of Cap Daniels. There was another one. I can't remember.
Well, that's funny.
Yeah.
It's so strange to me, like, to be talking to you guys, because I've been reading your stuff for a long time. Wayne's obviously, because he's got so many books. And how I kind of came about it was a buddy of mine. I have two friends. One told me about Doc Ford, and then another one told me about Ed Robinson's Trawler Trash series. So as I was reading the Trawler Trash, I think it was the first or second book. Mead Breeze is reading one of Rodney Riesel's Dan Coast books.
Yeah.
And I think he also mentioned Don Middlebrook too. So I found, and I guess he mentioned Jesse McDermott. I would imagine. I think so. So I found some of these books through that, through the fiction of the story. And I found, and of course, obviously Nick's, I found through Wayne's, of course.
What happened with Ed, he and I had talked about doing something together for a while, and I'd visited Ed on his boat many times, and he and his wife Kim, really nice people. And we were talking about it, and he finally said, "Oh, I got a great idea. I'll tell you about it after I'm done." And I had to wait. I had to wait until I read it. And I'm reading the book, and here's Mead Breeze pacing the deck. He's waiting for something to happen, waiting for a phone call or something, and he picks up a paperback to find out what Jesse McDermott's up to. I'm like, dude, this guy just made my fictional character a fictional character in his fiction. That's good.
Well,
so I turned around and made Ed and his wife Kim fictional characters in my book. Yeah. With my fictional character serving them beers.
Yeah, they came to the Rusty
Think about that for a minute.
Yeah, well, it's cool to do that, to sort of mix these universes, and I've kind of done that a few times where in the Jarvis stories, he'll be talking to, so for example, there's a Mossad agent at one point that he has to deal with. And he says something about, I don't know. He says, she says, well, you must have read too many Randy Wayne White novels. And he makes a comment like, yeah, too bad Doc Ford isn't real. And she looks at him and says, isn't he? And then just kind of goes on from there. Just to like a little tweak, a little who knows what kind of thing.
I love using current events and characters from outside my world. And me and Steve Becker share characters all the time. They just live 2 miles apart, so they obviously would know each other.
Yeah.
And it's fun, and it lends a lot more realism, I think, to the story.
Now, you had mentioned, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask Wayne, I think you had mentioned, I'm trying to remember where I heard this because I don't want to give away anything. I think it might have been one of the last TalkWrite podcast where none of the writers showed up. And you mentioned that, you might, like, the Jesse series might end at some point because Jesse's 57 years old and, you can't be an action hero and et cetera. And I think you were kind of that was still up in the air for you, is whether or not that was going to happen, or
because he's going to follow my lead, and when I'm retired is when he'll really retire. So he's got a few years left. I'm 63, and
right.
6 months ago I started on a whole new adventure, working out and getting back into shape, and I've lost a ton of fat and packed on a lot of muscle, and now I'm stronger and fitter than I've been in 40 or 50 years. So it is possible for a man in his 60s to be an action hero. I mean, physically it's possible. Whether the acuity's still there or not.
You can always retcon it too, because you know what? Robert B. Parker had the same problem with Spencer. And I don't know if you read the Spencer novels, but he wrote the first one in like 1971. And in that book, he said Spencer was 37. Well, so he writes for another 40 years or more. Well, Spencer can't be almost 80 years old. Spencer and Hawk are not. So as time went on, he just sort of kind of breezed past that and just let their ages sort of become ambiguous.
Yeah,
they're older,
but you don't know if you don't utilize any current events.
Yeah,
I have hurricanes that happen, and in one book, Hurricane, what was it?
Irma.
Well, you used Irma, so
Irma. Wilma was in Fallen Palm, so that dates it for 2005. Irma was definitely 2018. So putting those current events in there, you date your character. And that's, in hindsight, I shouldn't have done that, because now I've got an aging character with an aging dog.
Well, I sort of had the same when I wrote Jarvis. Like I said, I think I was 22 and he was 28. Now he's 34 and I'm 47. So I've put myself in the right spot where he's younger than me, so he can go on for some time before I poop off anyway. Hopefully.
I made Jesse just 2 years younger than me, just so that I knew that what he experienced in the Marine Corps was what I experienced. So yeah. He went through boot camp same time of year that I did. Everything was the same, so I could just draw on actual memories. And
now, quick pause here. Has everybody got their adult beverages? Because I know usually it used to be that, Wayne, that you'd make sure that you had your pussers and everybody's got their drink of the day going. Or is it just me?
I'm drinking the Deep Sea series from Zigmeister Brewing.
Wow.
It's a marvelous IPA.
Nice.
What am I doing wrong?
Diplomatico. I love that.
I'm actually drinking G2.
Oh, that's not as interesting.
Yeah.
What are you finishing up there, Dave?
Oh, that would be bourbon and ginger ale.
Yes.
Nice.
And Scott, you brought it up. Do you have something?
Well, so I just have. Now I was going to make a batch of Bosun's grog, but we made rather merry yesterday, so that's why, Dave, I'm not drinking my world famous margaritas.
That's what I was about to ask. Where's the margarita?
I drank them all yesterday, and at the end of the night, my cousin's like, "Hey, let's do shots," and I didn't listen to the dudes in my brain. They'll tell you not to do it, but no, I had to do it anyway. And so I was like, ooh, that's enough. So I'm drinking just some single malt Glenlivet here.
I thought, so I'm just drinking.
Take it light. I'm taking it light.
Yeah, take it light.
Well, believe me, there's more alcohol in my margaritas than there is in the scotch. I can guarantee you that.
Do we have any questions from YouTube before I plunge into something new?
I was just about to say, it seems like YouTube chat isn't working. I said, "Hey, how's everybody doing?" And there hasn't been anything since then.
Maybe we're just not interesting enough. Dave.
Is anybody on there? Say hi.
Well, let's see. I'm going to pull up.
No questions there.
Okay. Well, in addition to those other three series, I was fascinated that you've got some horror books and one of them's got probably the best title ever, The Dead Travel Fast. I love that.
Well, it's a Dracula series, literally. And that quote is actually from Bram Stoker's novel. When Dracula pulls up in his coach to collect Harker for the first time, disguised as a coachman, he tells the driver of the diligence, "They Tungten Reichen schnell," which is the dead travel fast. It's from a poem, a German poem about a woman whose husband returns theoretically from the dead and takes her away to the cemetery. It's a pretty cool Gothic story. Anyway, that's where it came from.
That's cool. I saw that it was Dracula, but my first thought was, zombies that don't shamble but run at you, which is the way it should be.
Keith Garner says hi, and my wife says hi, so we have two people watching.
Hey,
okay,
all right.
How many people are actually watching?
All right, we're going to edit all that about how
there's 7 watching.
When this is up there, all of this is going to be gone.
Well, we're awfully popular today. Jeez.
Well, it probably threw folks. Normally, we do this show on Mondays. But not if it's a holiday. So this is a rare Tuesday show. Let me ask about you. You have a new Scott Jarvis book coming out probably next week. Mm-hmm. Which one is this in terms? Like, how many are in that series?
This will be number 12.
Oh,
and it's called He That Covets. And what's really interesting about this book is in the 10th novel, Jarvis has owned my sailboat since number 3. And old Flipping Out got herself blown up with a RPG, burned and sank. And ever since I did that, by the way, I've had to replace my prop shaft. My rudder post is bent. I've got some and I had an ex-girlfriend tell me, she's like, "Oh, that's because the boat, she's mad at you for blowing her up, and now she's getting back at you."
Mm-hmm. Hey, I shed a tear. I ain't gonna lie to you.
She's on the hard right now, in fact, getting some work done. But so because of that, Jarvis was able to, in a very Doc Fordian, Jesse McDermott-y sort of thing, had got his hands on some Spanish gold enough to buy himself a 90-foot schooner.
Yeah,
even bigger than Jesse's. Yeah, how do you like me now? So, so he this book is it gets to use that ship for what it's for, and he goes to the Lesser Antilles and to Antigua and Jost Van Dyke, Antigua, Guadeloupe. So there's some action adventure, and he's now part of a special unit, sort of like what Jesse was in, different but similar type thing. So there's some international intrigue. There's a Japanese agent. There's a Mossad agent. There's Russian. I mean, it's pretty complicated and broad reaching. So it should be interesting.
And the Japanese agent will be the grandson of someone in the Bull Shark series.
No, but Jarvis's CO happens to be the great grandson of Ann Villard Turner, and Jarvis himself. His great grandfather is a character in the Bull Shark series. So I like to tie them together. In fact, Catherine Cook is his great grandmother. So it all kind of ties together some way.
But the Dracula books, you don't have any tie-ins between that and your other three.
Well, here's what I do sometimes. So, for example, the premise of the book, the lead character, aside from Dracula, of course, who is not a bad guy in the series, is a woman who's an aspiring writer. And at least once in each of the books, I can't give too much away, but a couple of the characters will mention that they're reading a crime series written by a guy in Florida. So
nice.
It's sort of a winky tie-in, but nothing particularly direct. Although who knows? Maybe I'll, one day do a crossover. I don't know. I'm mad with power. I can't help it.
It's fun doing that. That's how the charity series came about. It was Randy Wayne White's fault. He came out with the Hannah Smith series, and I've always said anything Randy does, I do, because he's successful, and you do what successful people do, right?
I sort of have the same thing. I do that with him and you. I really enjoyed Blue Collar, or No Collar to Blue Collar, by the way. I know it's a bit dated now in terms of some of the things in it, but I think I first read it a year or two ago. And I thought it was a very interesting, book for any writer and inspiring, obviously. I mean, here's a guy that was a truck driver one day and a best-selling author the next, like that. I mean,
there was a few months or years or decades between the two.
Right. But still, I mean, you went from that. I mean, and you talked about your process and where you were at the time. I think when you wrote that book, you were just writing Jesse 10. So
yeah, I have really refined and streamlined the process, and now it's gotten so smooth. This last release, my team had everything uploaded. Nick finished recording, all the audio was uploaded, everything was done like 3 weeks ago. We could have pushed the release up early, but we just let it sit where it was. And but it goes so smoothly now because I plan everything to the nth degree. And once I set the plan in motion, all my team members just pick up the ball and carry it to the next person, and they hand it off. And much like we're doing with Timeless with the football.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I'm still learning so much of the marketing and promotion side. The Bull Shark series is far and away my most popular one. You know, that it does the best of them all. But it's also it brings everything else up to some degree. And I've, you know, the Jarvis series is one that I find has been tougher because, well, that and the Dracula series, because they're very, very popular genres. So there's a lot of noise you have to push through to get noticed, and I'm still working on that and trying different things, and you know, so
It's a whole different world now than it was when I got started. So blue collar, no collars, yeah, it's dated, but it's more of a motivational anyway. So the motivational aspect of it's never going to die. But I will be writing another one someday called No Collar to White Collar. And, as I develop the business and start publishing other authors, then it will become an actual business one day, a real thing.
So I have a kind of a question, and it's really more for Nick and Dave, because as narrators, so for me, for example, because all of Wayne's stuff I've read through Audible. You know, I do a lot of audiobooks, including my own. And so in my mind, when I think of Jesse McDermott, Nick, I hear it's you. I mean, you're Jesse. You know what I mean? And the same thing with Dave, with certain of my characters now, with Jarvis. When I think of him, it's Dave's voice that I hear in my head when I'm writing. Do you have that problem, Wayne? When you write, do you hear Nick's voice in your head?
Absolutely. It's made my writing better. It's made the characters more realistic because now I'm speaking in their voice. And Nick started recording with book 5 in 2015, I think. Or no, I had 8 or 9 books at the time. And he finally caught up about 9 months later. But ever since he started doing the audiobooks, it's changed how I write, literally. I mean, because I hear not just what the voices in my head are saying, I hear them in character. In stereo.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I do the same thing. It's really bizarre. When I write now, I hear, you know, Dave's or Philip's voice in my head in doing the characters and stuff, which is really it's really pretty interesting. It's like you said, it definitely changes things.
You're going to have a lot of fun with Rusty in this next book, Nick.
Good.
You know, Rusty is the center of all knowledge in the Keys, right? He knows everything that's going on. Well, there's something going on that he doesn't know, and it's bugging the hell out of him. And he is just in the middle of a conversation. He'll be like, "Is it Panama? Are we going to Panama? Is that it?" Because
Rusty is one of my favorite people to voice.
The wedding, nobody knows, and Florence isn't going to announce it the day before, and they're all going to jump into Jesse's and Buck's flying boats and fly off to St. Bart's, but nobody knows where they're going yet.
Rusty, absolutely one of my favorite voices to do, but this last book, you had him talk a lot. And so there was a point where I'm like, okay, I got to take a break. I just felt like I was shredding my chords.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to like lighten it or anything. I was like, he's got to be full on. So I took an early lunch that day.
Well, now sometimes when I write a character, I'll try to, you know, because you describe sometimes what they sound like, what they look like, of course, and how they sound. And I think of like, how can I write this so Dave knows how to voice this guy, right?
Yeah, you do a really good job of that, especially during the Bull Shark series. Man, you've got a guy from Jersey, you got a guy from you know, New York, and you know, and Rhode Island, of course, with Pat Jarvis. I mean, it's
and
you
Maine.
do pretty good. Well, yeah, in Maine, yes.
Oh no,
I love the Maine guy because I based him off.
You'll have guys in your unit that are from absolutely everywhere.
Yeah,
and just in when I was just before I got out, I had 3 roommates, and they were from Boston, not Wyoming, Wisconsin, the other W, and where was Smitty from? He was from Georgia, and I was from Florida, so we're just all over.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. In a submarine, you'd be surprised how many guys are from Kansas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never even been in the water.
Well, Dave,
Yeah.
are you caught up with the books? Do you basically read whatever he's got coming out as it's being formatted and sent up, or do you wait till it's live in ebook and then you get it?
Yeah, I wait usually until Scott sends me the manuscript and just go right at it. Now that I've done several of the Bull Shark novels and Jarvis as well, the Private Eye stuff, I have at least an idea of who's in it, who the main cast is. Of course, there will always be others that are thrown in the mix, but I got a good feel. At least I feel like I have a good feel for the attitudes of the characters and what I'm going into for the most part. So yeah, I love to read. I've been reading since I was a wee kid, and I love to when I read a book, if it's a thriller, if it's a submarine thriller, in my head I'm going, this is the battle scene and I'm reading it in my head. It's intense. So that's when I'm doing the audio. I want to, I need to promote it the same way. It's got to come out the same way, or it's just boring. So,
I imagine battle scenes require real attention to pacing.
Yeah, especially in a submarine where a lot of it isn't just, there might not be a lot of shooting. There might be several pages of just waiting, but you have to make that tension because you don't know what's coming down. You
might hear
awesome.
The propellers.
Yeah, the whoosh and yeah, it's exciting. Yeah.
We
a lot of fun. Those are a lot of fun.
Well, Dave is actually my third narrator. When I started doing audiobooks, the first couple I did, I found a guy and I think I was so excited about just getting them, on ACX that it wasn't until I did the second with the guy, I was like, he was very monotone and just wasn't that good. I hope he doesn't see this. And then I got another guy. His name was Lee Strayer, who he actually still is on. If you get Jarvis 1, 4, 5, and 6, he's done those. And I've thought about maybe even having Dave redo them just because for consistency. But Lee did a good job. The fourth one was the first one he did. And he got, like Dave, he got the character. He got the attitude. He understood what I was going for. But he and I just had some issues during book 6 and things were going on in his life and it just kind of didn't work out. And then like Dave actually had done an audition for me for a zombie book that I wrote. So I that was intended to be a series, but I just kind of lost interest in it. And so Dave did a sample for me and I liked what he did. So when I was looking for the narrator, I said, let me see if I can find this guy again. And he was available and did the next Jarvis for me and it turned out really good. So I'm like, well, he's doing Bull Shark too,
That works out.
Right on. I can't wait for the other side of it too, the other Bull Shark. I don't know. What are you going to call those?
So it's going to be called Decker's Raiders. So it's Al Decker and his guys. It's just going to, it's going to be focused mostly around Al and, Taggart and Leiter and Entwater and what's his face? Treadway.
Boots on the ground, guys. I like it.
Treadway. Please stop calling me sir. Yes, sir. Love that. It's one of my favorite gags. But so it's just like where Tokyo Express, there was so much going in between. And I thought, that's almost 2 books worth. I mean, you had the Bull Shark and then Jarvis was on the S-52 and then you had the Marines and you had Battle of Alligator Creek and the Mechanicau. And it was like, oh my God, it was so much. So I said, well, if I could split them apart and keep them together, and we'll see how it goes, see how if it's well received or if it's just like I can always put them back together. But you just can't ignore all the stuff the Marines are doing. I mean, there's too many stories.
Yeah.
I mean, every other day there's a story of incredible heroism and bravery and sacrifice, and you just can't let that stuff. So when people get mad at me for coloring outside the lines, which they do, because Dave knows, like there's some stuff in that series that's not true history. 10% of it is completely made up for the purposes of the story. But it lets me tell an interesting, different story. And it's not just the same old thing again. Because I mean, how many World War II books are there? I mean, thousands, right? So,
do you cover the Raiders on Tulagi?
yes. Well, I haven't, a little bit, not too much, but I will more in this series, because the guy, the main character, well, Decker, he's in the first Raiders in Colonel Edson's group. So I will definitely focus more on those guys and go back, and because there's some stories there too, obviously.
Let's see. Double check YouTube for us real quick. Okay, we'll edit that out too. Do you have any surface ship characters, or is it all focused on the submarine?
Well, again, the thing I'm having an issue with, there's two things that I have a hard time writing a short book. Like the new Jarvis is, I think, 96 or 97,000 words, which for me is, that's a short one. So the World War II series, of course, it just grows. It's a world war, so it's hard not to. So there are, So book one was focused around Operation Drumbeat, where the Germans were attacking American shipping off the Atlantic coast. The second book centered mostly around the Battle of Midway. And then the third one was called the Cactus Navy, which was the Marine, the Marine assault on Guadalcanal. So you can't not focus, break away and focus on, air crews aboard the Enterprise or Japanese. There's cutaway scenes with Yamamoto and his chief of staff. There's a couple of Japanese characters who are, there's one who is sort of he's working to help the Americans win the war secretly. Not because he's a traitor, but because he feels the way Yamamoto feels, that this war is just going to pull Japan into a terrible situation. And the faster the Americans win, the fewer lives will be lost, So yeah, there's not too many Americans, other than there's a few pilots that keep coming back. But again, that's another thing. I thought about writing a series just based around the Enterprise, or maybe even all the carriers, but it just, I could do this till I die. I'll never finish,
And Nick's a big history buff also, right, Nick?
Yeah, the reason I asked, I'd love to have a scene where you've got a periscope witnessing the South Dakota and the was it the Washington blasting away at the Kirishima, one of the very few battleship on battleship combats in the Pacific, apart from the one in Leyte Gulf.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it will be in there. I'm writing book 5, and I'm still in 1942, and that's just, the Cactus Navy ended a few days after the initial invasion, so it ended like on the 11th or 12th of August, and the next book, Tokyo Express, starts off almost immediately and ends just after the Battle of the Eastern Solomon. So, the whole book takes place within 10 days. And again, I could write an entire novel inside of what happens on Guadalcanal or Tulagi or Gavutu in a week. It's just, there's just so much. It's, you'd think it'd be limiting because you have to follow along with history. But like I said, I color outside the line some. I invent ships that weren't there, or in the next book, there'll be a 5th Congo class battleship that the Bull Shark has to go after, that sort of thing. But, it all operates within the framework, but fictionalizing some stuff allows you to tell some different stories and go outside of, again, Harry Homewood, his series was really good. There's so many good series. There's so many good books from living, Dick O'Kane and Eugene Fluckey and Charlie Lockwood. And there's so many, real accounts of the war that you can draw on and that are just, even the real stories told dryly are unbelievable. Yeah, it's, Dick O'Kane's books are amazing.
You almost always have to span at least 5 or 7 days. You can't just write, just one battle scene, and that's the whole book. That's
no.
Randy Wayne White did it. One of his books, I forget which one. The whole book takes place in 24 hours.
I think Hunter's Moon.
Hunter's Moon.
Yeah, where he's there's an island and he's paddling ashore to. I think that's the one that you're talking about.
No, that's the one where he's trapped underground, underwater, and a giant snake or something.
Oh, that one. Okay, that's another one. Yeah. I don't remember the title, but I know the one you're talking about. Yeah, where he's running out of air.
That's just tension all the way through. When you write a book that only spans 24 hours, you have to do that.
Yeah. Well, it can be done. I mean, look at the 24 series. I mean, the whole season, it's 24. So, so every episode's an hour, which is,
it's 10 episodes to make an audio book, though.
Right. Well, that's it. And that's where, when you write, I always said, if I could write the first Jarvis, the first couple, I think, are 7 hours and change. And number 11 was like 14 or something. And the bull sharks are all in that range, 13, 14 hours. So if I could find a way to write a shorter book, I'd be richer, wouldn't I? Because I could sell more books.
Well, Dave, let me ask you, because everyone's seeing the guitars there over your shoulder.
Yeah.
And listening to your basso profundo voice, you said you were kind of new to the audiobook world, but I'm guessing with that voice, you're not new to a microphone.
No, I work for a radio station in Dayton, Ohio. I work for Mix 107.7. I'm on the morning show, and I've been on that show for, good gravy, 14 years, I guess it's been now. And I've been in radio for a little over 20. So yeah, and I got into narrating just, I love to read. I'm like, let's give this a go. It's just something else to do. And I'm also I do a lot of I'm the public address announcer for the Dayton Dragons, which is a little minor league baseball team for the Cincinnati Reds affiliates in Dayton. And I get to do all the, in-house announcing, which is a lot of fun. Although last night they got killed 20-1, so it wasn't a whole lot of fun then. Yeah. Oh, it was brutal.
How do you keep an upbeat attitude as an announcer when you're down by?
Yeah, it was hard, Wayne. It's real hard. They had a 12-run third inning. The opponent did, the Whitecaps. It was on 5 hits. It was walk after hit batter. It was just beating your head against the microphone after a while. I was like, throw a strike, please throw a strike. But so that's so I've been doing broadcasting for quite a while now, and just wanted to start dipping my toe in narrating, and thankfully I got hooked up with Scott.
Yeah, the guy who writes.
I don't sing, so I just play those. I'm not a singer songwriter guy. I just like to play those things.
Are you in a band?
No, but I have played with a band a couple of times. That's just, I think that was, I'm 52. I think that might have been a midlife crisis about 4 years ago. Hey, I get an idea. Let's pick up the guitar. And now it's an addiction. I think I have 7 of them. So,
fantastic.
And it's just fun.
Count these off, Jordan.
I just witnessed Scott attempting to make an adjustment on his phone, and now he's gone. So
did he hang up?
If you're watching, now it's Dave's time to shine.
We've got 9 guitars here in the studio, and that's not all of them.
Yeah, I appreciate everything.
Jordan's
you got 9? Nice. Right.
9 guitars and basses.
Let's see. Yeah, we have lost Scott.
Very nice.
Hopefully he'll find his.
Some internet here too.
Uh-oh, what happened?
I saw him reaching up to adjust something, and then he went away.
Oh no.
Scotty.
Dave froze up about that same time.
Yeah.
Too.
I don't know. That was weird. Yeah, my internet was like, "You're unstable," but I don't know. We're back now.
Well, so Dave, do you record any other series, any other types of books?
I have done some instructional manuals type of things. I've done something for the Enneagram, which I got finished reading that, and I had no idea what I just read. But the author of it loved it, and it's been very successful on Audible.
Oh, great.
I don't, I have no idea. It was very confusing to me, but I tried to, do an even keel type of thing. And I've done a couple other instructional manual type of things. Well, and but for the most part on the radio, doing the dragon stuff, it's, I got to find time. It's hard to find time to narrate these days. Thankfully, I have a studio these days in my basement, which allows me to, to sit at home and get it done. But yeah, it's, it is what it is. I love doing it. It's so much fun. I know it's, you get to read, you get to enjoy and read to folks, and, and listen and enjoy a lot of good stuff and learn a lot. I'll tell you what, when I first started doing Scott's books, Jarvis lives on a sailboat. I knew zero about sailing. I had no idea. I didn't know what starboard, port, bow. I didn't know what left, right. I didn't know any of that kind of stuff. And
we just hope that he does. That's right.
And he's back.
Well,
He's trying to get back.
Is he in? Oh, there he is. We need to get there. He is.
a little low battery issue. I had to emergency plug in a yeah. So it's funny because Dave was just telling you about all the fact that he's a landlubber, and the guy that he gets to narrate for throws him all kinds of nautical stuff, right?
Right. Yeah. Born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. It doesn't get much more landlocked than that. But yeah, it's been fun learning how to sail through Scott Cook.
Well, Scott, it's interesting you do so much nautical stuff, and you were born and raised, I think, in one of the towns that I associate with the sort of the beginning of the merchant marine, from between Boston and Gloucester. I always put Providence there in the top 5 for our history.
Well, at Newport, of course.
Newport, yes.
But I was actually when I was a kid, we moved to Stewart, which is on the East Coast, sort of. It's about 45 minutes north of West Palm. Well, okay, I don't know if you've read or heard of Rodney Riesel's Jensen Beach Mysteries. Jensen Beach is pretty much part of Stewart.
If you have to learn how to pronounce that right, it's Sturt.
Sturt, that's right.
Sturt.
It's just a little bit outside of Hullapaw. I know that area really, really well. I grew up in Melbourne, and as soon as I got my license, I was all over Stewart, Hullapaw, Fort Pierce, all the way out to Belglade, just everywhere my car could go, and some places it couldn't go.
Well, Stewart's interesting because it's a bit like St. Pete, where I live now, where a lot of the town is a bit of a peninsula because of the Indian River Lagoon. So there's a lot of inland water there. So I mean, growing up, we were always, sailing, fishing, diving, boat. I mean, we were watermen since you could hold a tiller. So it's only natural that would bleed into my writing, being a salty sailor that I am. I have not sworn once, though, Dave.
Nice boy.
I get yelled at by people a lot for that, by the way. I don't know if that happens to you, Wayne or Nick, where I get guys that will even send me an email or write a review on the Bull Shark series, especially, and chastise me for the adult language. And I try to
I've got a couple. I'm like,
there's a reason they call it cursing like a sailor.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Like, these are Marines and sailors. These are rough and tumble guys. And I'm sure that when a Japanese bayonet is tearing your guts out, you should say, "Gosh darn it, you Asian fellow." But that's not what they say.
No.
Nope.
Nick, you haven't asked your kryptonite question.
Oh boy.
Well, I'm guessing that Dave, since he's come from radio and has started to narrate, that a lot of the accents might be kryptonite. But I'll go ahead and ask. We always ask our narrators, is there one that you just can't do, and pray to God that he won't hit you with?
That's all of them. No,
That's why I didn't ask.
Yeah,
I figured.
right. Yeah, I'm. Like I said, I'm just getting. I'm getting my feet wet thanks to Scott and doing a lot of his books. But I'm learning. I'll try. Thank heavens for YouTube, because you can kind of get a quick learn of a dialect or an accent, and I'll try to listen to it over and over again and keep that. Call me out. He's like, dude, that was terrible. Try again. Of that kind of nature. So you try it once, doesn't work. He says, yeah, you might want to try this one again. So, but there's a lot of fun. I love doing all the characters on Bull Shark, especially. Like he said, there's Maine, there's New York, there's Jersey, there's Mississippi. It's a lot of fun. It's just a big group of family guys, and they all jaw on each other and getting each other, but they're still a family, and it's a lot of fun to read, man.
Well, that kind of brings up a thing that, and I think maybe Wayne, because Nick obviously writes as well, but he does his own narrating, so he can't really critique himself. But how much editing or how much suggestion do you do with Nick's narrating? Because I always have a weird thing about that, where I don't want to critique too much or give too much micromanagement. And you know what I mean?
I really don't have to do a whole lot. I give Nick a character outline, a list of all the different characters and where they're from, who they are, what they do, height, weight, hair color, all physical descriptions. And then he just kind of comes up with the character accent or the character's voice based on that. A lot of times, they have a strong Southern accent or New York accent or Australian or whatever. And so that makes it a lot easier. But a lot of them are just plain old Florida people like me and you. Mm-hmm. We don't have accents. We have an accent of a whole conglomeration of different people, because Florida is just all outsiders.
Yeah. Well, I do have one, but it doesn't come out as often as it used to. But because I've had a thing with trying to teach Dave the difference between, New England accents. There's several of them, and where I'm from in Rhode Island, it's more New York. So up there, people kind of talk like I'm talking right now. They go, they park their car, they go down to they go out in the yard, like that. But it's easy to sort of get to the Boston, which is Hatta. You got much of a Hatta accent, dude. Come on, get in your car. We'll go down to, So I know I drive them nuts with that, I'm sure.
No. You get only way to learn, my man. Only way to learn.
Yeah, the New England, Boston is one of my kryptonites, and because half the time I sound like Mayor Quimby, which is Boston Brahmin, not really Boston.
Chowder.
Yeah, chowder.
Say it again, Frenchie. Chowder.
That's right. Hope you guys know these references, man. So sometimes people don't. I do a lot of that, and sometimes I think, boy, I wonder if some people are going to get some of these obscure references I make, but.
I slid in a reference for Archer, this animated series on FX.
Brilliant.
And I had 2 readers send me emails. Oh my God, I love that you stuck it. It worked. You didn't have to know the context, but if you did, it was twice as funny.
Yeah, those little Easter eggs, readers love finding those. And it's just something that you have in common with a small handful of your readers. And they know who they are and they know who you are.
Well, I think that, especially in the Jarvis series, there's a lot of pop culture references, for example, he'll say, Lisa will say, be careful, Jim. And he'll say, sound medical advice, Bones, stuff like that. And because that's how people, that's how, when you're talking to your friends, you do movie lines and make references. You do a line from Caddyshack or, Young Frankenstein, whatever. That's how people are. So I think I've always felt, no matter what I'm writing, and this is actually an interesting question for Nick and Wayne too, is I feel that no matter what the story, that the characters really are the most important thing. If you can make them seem real to people, you'll have a much better story. The personalities and the dialogue and stuff has got to be true to life. Your readers have to think that they're looking or listening to real people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that, we are at the end of the hour.
I just finished my. Yeah.
Time to refill.
Yep.
Darn it.
Scott,
Ain't none but ice.
Dave, thanks for being on here with us. It's been a lot of fun. And
Well,
I'd
thanks
also
for having
like to
us.
thank our supporters, tropicalauthors.com, Latitudes and Attitudes Magazine, Down Island Publishing, Down Island Press, Aurora Publicity. Who am I missing?
Pirate Radio.
Pirate Radio. Yes.
Oh, I love them.
So anyway, thanks everybody for watching. And for those of you who didn't ask any questions, well, better luck next time. Maybe YouTube wasn't working and there's a whole bunch of questions, but all I could see was 2 comments, hi and hey, and that's it.
Yeah.
So anyway, there'll be a lot more in the edited version once we get that uploaded tomorrow. So good night, you guys.
Thanks for having us, guys. It's great talking to
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, guys.